Thank you. My name is Cameron, and welcome to TechSoup courses. And today we'll be talking about Ask the Expert for Power Apps. We have a wonderful expert, Carlos McDonald, with us, and then he'll be giving you the presentation and talking about more about the Power Apps. So, Carlos, take it away.
Hello, everybody. My name is Carlos McDonald. I am a technical specialist at Microsoft for the Tech for Social Impact team. Our Tech for Social Impact team is basically what we do is we work with not-for-profits in the UN to bring them our technology and help them become more abreast with that technology and move them into the digital age, right? So just to get started here, let me share my slide. Should I just share the screen here, Cameron?
Yep, go ahead and share your screen, Carlos. Thank you.
All right, sounds good. Give me a second here. And let me go ahead and get this. Okay. So some of us might be asking ourselves, what is Power Apps? I doubt that. If you're in this presentation, you probably already know what Power Apps is. So Power Apps is basically part of our Microsoft Power Platform, right? What the Power Platform is comprised of is Power BI, Power Apps, Power Automate, and Power Virtual Agents. It's built on the Common Data Model and the Common Data Service. The Common Data Service, we'll talk a little bit more in depth in a couple of slides, but basically what it does is it allows you to connect to disparate data systems, and bring that data together, right? Let's move on. We're not going to be talking about Power BI and the other ones. We're just going to be focusing on Power Apps. Okay. So what is Power Apps? Power Apps is basically Microsoft's low-code, no-code development experience. What I mean by low-code, no-code is it has the ability for end users, not developers, to go ahead and kind of start creating these applications based out of business processes that they're currently either doing manually or doing outside of the system. So it brings a super strength, right, to the end user. Additionally, it brings and maintains security and data governance, which is what a lot of nonprofits are lacking in some of these business processes, right? Some of these things are being done in Excel and macro templates, can be done in emails and things of that nature, right? So we want to be able to have more visibility and extend some of our business applications and not do these things outside of the system, right? Or we kind of have to bring that data back in. So that's what Power Apps does, right? And we also have the web experience and then the app experience, which can be done on your mobile phone, all right? So what is it supported? It's supported on any platform. So be it iOS, be it your Androids, your Apple phones, right? And it allows you to share these applications across your organization, right? So let's keep moving on. And additionally, Power Apps has a seamless integration with things inside of the Microsoft ecosystem. So Teams, Office 365, Dynamics, and especially Azure, because it sits on top of that CDS, which is built on top of the Azure framework. Okay. Extensibility, right? How do we extend some of these business applications? We'll talk a little bit more about that in depth in a further slide. Design experience. When we talk about designing in Power Apps, it basically allows for the end user to look at these things and from a different point of view, right? So how do you want to articulate this and make it look very functional? And give it that design, right? So it's not these Excel spreadsheets anymore. It's basically, it puts a little bit more complex development into the hands of a non-development technician, right? Again, we're talking about the data connectivity as part of the CDS. So the Common Data Service at this time has 264 business applications that it can connect to. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a later slide as well. So again, we're talking about the Common Data Service and then App Logic. So within the App Logic, Power Apps has Canvas apps, and then it has model-driven apps. Model-driven apps are built up on top of the CDS, and it basically can build out business processes and have step-by-step examples that need to be kind of need to be completed before you can move on to the next step. And we'll talk about adding logic into your Power Apps later as well. Power Automate. So basically what Power Automate does, Power Automate and Power Apps work in conjunction a lot of times, right? Power Automate will allow you to bring your business processes and allow it to bring flows and workflows into these apps. So let's take, for instance, that you're finishing up a form. Okay, I actually just built out a POC about a week ago where I had a customer that needed sorry, I can't think of the scenario. They needed a, wow, I am blanking out here. They needed, sorry, there you go. Yeah, so basically they had churches that were doing offerings, right? As part of this Power App, what happened was at the end of the church service, they would basically enter their offerings, and then they would submit that app into their ERP system, right? So it would basically create a transaction. As part of that transaction, what would happen was it would send out a flow to the person that took in these offerings, just to make sure that that is the correct number. And basically what they would do is they would approve it, and then that transaction would then be successfully sent to the ERP system, right? So that's how Power Apps and Power Automate kind of show this integration together, and they're built into one business process. And we kind of can look at the anatomy of the workflow. Again, so it supports all major platforms across, so be it, let's talk about SharePoint, it can be Salesforce, it can be Dynamics, Adobe. I actually haven't found any scenarios where I couldn't connect to it. You could basically either connect through an ODBC connection or an API. And then also it has the ability to create custom integrations as well, right? Again, kind of the same thing with Power Apps. You can share these across your organization with the data governance piece and the security piece, right? So these are all kind of built off that Azure Active Directory data governance. So within your organization, you would have to have that AAD certification, and then you could kind of like utilize these as long as your admin gives you access to the portal, right? And we kind of talked about the seamless integrations, and these are things that we kind of discussed with Power Apps as well. Right? So let's kind of move together, right? So how do these things work together? These all work as part of the common data service. The common data service is that integration point that I kind of alluded to earlier. And it allows you to embed different applications within your Power Apps or within your business applications. So what I mean by business applications, I mean your ERP systems such as Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations, or Dynamics 365 Customer Engagement, right? So I've built out Power Apps in the past that have different screens, and once you get to a certain screen, you can kind of see a Power BI report that gives you a visualization of what data has been entered within that Power App. So kind of brings the whole Power Platform together in a more holistic picture, right? So again, we're talking about that low code, no code technology. I will say that there is a higher entry point with Power Apps. It's not just Excel. It's not just kind of like building these things out. So there is a learning point, a steep learning curve, but once you get going, you can kind of get moving on this thing. So a little backstory, I built out an application, my first application for a POC took me about a week to build out, right? That same application that I built out in about a week, I could probably do it now in about 4 hours. So although there is this learning curve, I think that once you get ramped up within this application, you kind of, just like everything else, practice makes perfect, right? Let's kind of move next. Just move on here. And I think kind of talked about that. So starting with Power Apps, right? How do we kind of get started with Power Apps? So Power Apps can kind of be installed as part of your O365 entitlements. So if you have Office entitlements with Teams, a lot of people can get started and connect to things such as SharePoint and Office 365, maybe Teams and things of that nature, right? When we talk a little bit more about complex model-driven apps, we're talking about utilizing the common data service in that data structure. And those are end-to-end business processes that we need a Power Apps license to kind of to incorporate those model-driven apps, right? So I will talk a little bit about authoring, but I also kind of want to discuss that Power Apps currently, we have a bunch of partners in our Microsoft ecosystem that do app in a day workshops that can kind of provide a tutorial for people that want to kind of just learn, hey, what is Power Apps and what can it do for my organization, right? Some use cases are anything that is a paper process right now can possibly be done within Power Apps and then help that organization kind of move from a paper-bound process to paperless, right? It also provides a better place to store the data and then automatically provides a better platform to report off of that data. So again, I think at the end of the day, when you're talking about Power Apps and a opportunity to kind of bring the structure together, we're talking about bringing the data into a centralized repository, taking action on that data, and then reporting on that data in a more succinct manner, right? So that's all I have for my presentation portion. Please let me know if there are any questions, and I'll be more than happy to answer those.
Hi, Carlos. So, all right, I think, yeah, so Carlos, we do have some questions that actually came through. And then the first one is, what does E3 Office 365 subscription include as it relates to Microsoft Forms, Flow, Power Apps, and Power BI?
So the E3 entitlements provide you with a basic form of Power Apps, right? So when we're talking about a basic form of Power Apps, it allows you, it gives you connection or it can connect to certain entitlements. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen once more. And if you go to, give me a second here, I'm trying to share my screen. Can you make me share my screen? I'm having an issue here.
Actually, Carlos, we're still seeing your screen. You're all
We're
good,
still, yeah.
buddy.
Oh, okay. All right, perfect. Give me a second here. All right, so if I go to make.powerapps.com, and this is kind of where everything happens, right? And I go into my data and I go into my connections. As part of your—
Hey, Carlos, this is Jim here. We're gonna just, would you mind unsharing your screen and then sharing it again?
Yes, no problem. Yep.
Thank you.
And let me go ahead and share my screen. Please let me know when you can see my screen.
Sure. Yeah, we can see it now.
Okay, so as part of your Office 365 entitlements, you're going to have access to all of the standard connectors, right? So standard, don't look at the type here, but look on this left-hand pane, and anything that isn't premium is a standard connector, right? So Dropbox, OneDrive, and SharePoint are pretty much standard connectors. Also Excel. So if you're doing anything in Excel, you can also use that as a connector, right? So I would say you can use that for Power Automate and Power Apps, right?
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. So we have another question, and that is, can anyone? I think it's probably, you probably answered that question, but let me just ask one more time just to see that everyone is actually on the same page. So can anyone create Power Apps without a license?
So Power Apps cannot be created without a license, right? You can go into powerapps.com and get a 30-day free trial. But once again, you only have 30 days to kind of play around with the application, and then you'll either need to have that as part of your E3 entitlements or move up to a Power Apps license.
All right, all right. And thank you. And we have another question, and that is, what is the Common Data Service?
So the Common Data Service is your ability to connect to out-of-box business applications. So these are connectors that are built off the Common Data Service, right? Right now we have 265 connectors that are built out, and Microsoft publishes probably about another 3 per month. So this list will continue growing and growing and growing.
All right.
And sorry, one more point that I would like to touch on. Additionally, if you don't see your business application here, you can create a custom connector that isn't very difficult to create at all, right? It's just basically creating that connector to connect to your data source.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thanks. Yeah, and then someone actually was asking same question about, like, they were trying to find out the difference between the standard and premium connector. Then you just answered that question. So yeah.
Yep.
All right. Okay, so we have another question, that what would you recommend for someone that is getting started with Power Apps?
So what I would recommend is, there's a couple of different ways that you can kind of go about this, right? You can get started on one of our App in a Day that are either partner led. They basically walk you through creating an application, and then you kind of get immersed in that, right? Additionally, our community has very, very good information. So if you go up to this question mark here and go into community, what we have here is a plethora of information from, how can I connect to X, Y, and Z? How can I create a certain function? How can I write back to this database or this application? How can I connect this flow to basically create this write function, right? All of this can be found within the community. If there's things that I don't know how to do, I basically look here. And additionally, we have a ton of webinars and video galleries that have a ton of our experts at Microsoft and outside in our partner ecosystem. They post their videos here, and you can basically search there, right, for anything that you're looking for.
All right, great. All right, so thank you. And all right, so we have another question, and then it is, when building a Power App, is there a workflow capability built into the application?
Yes. So with Power Automate, you can basically create that workflow capability and send off those flows via email, or give an alert to whoever needs to take action on that item, right? So yes, there is workflow capabilities.
All right, thank you. And somebody asked this question: what is the difference between a Canvas app and model-driven app?
So a Canvas app is basically, go back here, create. And so the Canvas app is something that you can build off with no business process flow, right? So there doesn't need to be a strict method to your madness, right? So it can be different screens. There is no strict flow. A model-driven app is built off of the Common Data Service and has a flow that is identified and a process that needs to be followed, right? So it's a little bit more complex, and it follows a business process. So those are the two differences between them. Additionally, if you're working with applications such as Microsoft Dynamics Finance and Operations or Customer Engagement, you can extend your system to build out these business processes through Power Apps, and those are built off of model-driven apps. Right.
All right, great. All right. Okay, so here we have another question, and And it is, what scenarios should an organization target to move from legacy processes to a more automated application such as Power Apps?
So what I would say is anything that is being done paper-based, right? Excel functions where you're creating databases in your Excel and things of that nature. I would say you would move that into possibly like a SharePoint list and create a Power App for that, right? I had one of my customers, they had a process where they are taking entries for their customers or constituents that need heart surgeries, right? So they're basically going out there, writing these processes on paper, and then bringing that information back to their ships and entering that data. So it's basically like a double data entry, right? They're also using, and they're entering that information in Excel, into an Excel spreadsheet, right? Currently, I built out a POC for them probably about a month ago, where they're basically building out an app. They take a picture of the individual. They take a picture of any of their paperwork, right? And this is all done in a system where all of that information is being stored in a secure location, right? So nobody can get into it unless they have access, right? So again, security is at the forefront of this whole thing. So now they went from a very, very manual process to something that is more streamlined and can be reported on in a more succinct manner.
Right. All right. Thanks. So one of the participants of this live event, Richard, asked this question that I'm wondering how this Power App is published for the end user.
So there's a couple of ways you can do that, right? So within Power Apps, basically what I can do is once I build out the app, I basically can go ahead and give individuals access to that app. Those individuals that need to do that, and that's done in our admin center. Additionally, like when you first start off with Power Apps, you can kind of provide your whole organization with access if you want to do it, or you can do it by Active Directory teams, right? So if you have a certain team, so let's say finance or operations or your supply chain team or your warehouse team, you can break that up into those Active Directory teams and give those people access to the apps.
All right, thank you. All right, so folks, if you have another question, you can still ping on the chat. We have Carlos with us, and then he'll be able to answer those questions. Okay, let me see that. Okay.
Any additional questions, guys?
Yeah, we actually have, I think you did answer that question, but I can repeat that just to make sure that everyone actually got the answer. So do you offer specific one-on-one training for technical coding problems where I'm stuck?
So you can reach out to me, and I will be more than happy to assist on that, on any technical blockers that you're having.
All right.
I'm fairly accessible at nighttime, so you know, as long as my wife doesn't yell at me, right?
All right. Thanks. Thanks. And we just got another question from Rick, and he's asking, can you embed a Power Apps in Team?
So yes. So as part of a demo that I'm currently working on right now, we're actually embedding a HR application within Teams. So what it's allowing us to do is it's allowing us to workers basically saying, hey, like I need to take off these days, and it's sending a workflow over to their manager based on the Active Directory hierarchy. And it's allowing them to approve it there, and it basically just goes into a SharePoint list, right? So,
All right.
yes. So yes, you can embed it into Teams.
All right. Okay. And Sarah, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Cam.
Yeah, just last question. I think probably this will also touch, but I'm just trying to make sure that we are all on the same page. So Sarah asked this question: is publishing the same for users outside the organization?
So no, right? So when you need to publish things outside of the organization, if they're not part of your organization, what we recommend is creating a Power Apps portal. So portal basically is an external website that will give people outside of your organization access to, for you to be able to compile that data. I've created a couple of portals and use cases where organizations, not-for-profits want to take in donations, and then they want to be able to allow their constituents to see how the organization is doing in terms of, let's say if they have donation efforts where they want to reach $10,000, you can basically look at a report and see who's donating and how much left over and things of that nature, right? So there's a couple of different use cases there. And I'd be more than happy to do a follow-up and kind of talk a little bit more about the portals.
All right, thank you. And we have another question from Deanna, and question is, I have a Power App using a SharePoint list. I'm having difficulty getting one of my fields to work. When a change drop down status field, I want to update a date field to current date in another field on the same Power App screen. I have tried several different code examples, but not able to get this one to work. So,
okay.
Yeah.
If she emails me, I'll be more than happy to take a look at that. So I'm going to drop my email in the chat. Give me a second here. We can work on it together. All right.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Okay. Any additional questions, or sorry guys, I do have a hard stop at 11:30. I'd be more than happy to do a follow-up on any technical questions, or maybe on the Power Apps portal, and kind of give you guys a little bit more context into what that can do. And additionally, if you look at TechSoup's Power Apps 101 and Power Apps 201 courses, that'll give you a little bit more context into how to build out these applications and give you some insights into what needs to be done, right? More specific use cases, again, if you guys look at make.powerapps.com and go into that video gallery in the community is always a great resource, right? So,
Carlos, this is this is Jim here from TechSoup, one of the team members. Just want to thank you for all your hard work today. I know you have a heart out, but for the learners out there, we have Ms. Chandra, who's going to take over for Carlos and answer additional questions that you may have. So, Ms. Chandra, if you want to just turn on your video, we can continue the course. But Carlos, thank you. We'll let you go, and we all have your email in case we need to reach out.
All right, thanks, guys. Hey, thanks, Superbo. Sorry.
Yep. No worries, Carlos. I'll do my best. I'll do my best. So yeah, I am happy to answer any other questions folks might have. Carlos
and thank you. I said Ms. I meant Mr.
That's okay. No worries at all. So yeah, happy to do my best to answer any other additional questions. I should let you know that I did the app in a day training about a week ago that Carlos was talking about. It's fantastic, highly recommended. I'm in the process of going through my certification for Power Platform, so studying to be Power Platform certified. So I'm maybe just a little bit further along the road than many of you who are getting to getting acquainted with Power Platform. So slightly different perspective if there are if there are any questions left in the chat.
Thank you, Chandra. It was a pleasure having you on this.
Sure.
Yeah. We actually have one question from Sarah, and she's asking what's a POC?
Oh, proof of concept. So that's one that I know. So yeah, I mean, Carlos is our technical specialist. And so what he does for customers oftentimes is if customers are thinking about a solution, they're not quite sure if they want to make the investment in Power Apps. Carlos will put something together in a few hours to show customers, here's what you could do, right? As just a proof of concept, put together the wireframe, the basic elements of the app to show people what it would look like. And so just give them an idea of, is this what you're looking for? If so, we can do a big engagement where we actually build the whole thing out. So Carlos is, yeah, definitely use the term POC a lot, but that's a big part of his job as a technical specialist working with customers to show them what's possible with Power Apps.
Right. All right. So yeah, folks, so we have Chandra with us, and then he is an expert, as he already explained. So do we have more questions? We would like to take this opportunity to answer all those questions that you may have related to Power Apps.
I mean, like Carlos mentioned, so my job is I am the skilling person at Microsoft. So I work really closely with TechSoup and team and to build out, a pretty robust set of courses that we call the Microsoft Digital Skills Center for Nonprofits. We have all types of courses there. I don't know, I think we're over 30 now. And, we started with things like Word, Excel, PowerPoint. Teams has been our most popular one, but we're seeing a lot of people starting to go through our Power BI courses, 101, 102, 201, 202. The Power Apps courses are starting to become more and more popular as well, the 101 course in particular, but I think 201 is fantastic. So yeah, we're constantly adding content. If there's additional content that people are looking for in terms of courses, like I'm your guy. So we'd love to hear, obviously, your Power Apps questions, but if there's other types of training that you're looking for, please let me know, because we're always on the hunt for more training. And we're going to be translating a lot of this content into Spanish, French, Portuguese, Arabic later on in the year. So
right.
All
right, thanks. Okay, so we got another question from Deanna, and
okay.
yeah, and then the question is, do you think it is better to reuse one screen and change the mode, or use multiple screens for the different modes?
I mean, I would think that it's better to use the same screen and try to templatize it as much as possible. I mean, just in my experience, which is not quite as robust as Carlos's, but my experience, it definitely makes a lot of sense to start with a template that you like, copy, paste it to different forms, and adjust as accordingly. It'll really reduce the amount of time you need to create an app. Carlos was talking before about, I think, how it took him a couple of days to build his first app. Now he could do it in 4 hours. I think a lot of that comes down to templatizing things and reusing your work as much as you can. And if you really come to a point where you're like, okay, this template isn't going to work on this form or this screen, then you can tweak it or just start from scratch. But I guess my general advice would be to reuse the template as much as you can.
All right. Thank you. All right. So we're waiting for more questions. If someone comes up with another question, we are happy to answer. We have Chandra. Chandra, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your first name. Can you?
Oh, Apurva.
Apurva. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. So we have Apurva with us, and then we would like to take this opportunity to get as many questions as you guys want to ask, and then we can have Apurva to answer those questions. So guys, it's all yours.
Yeah, or if there's licensing questions, questions regarding the Power Platform in general, which is Power BI, like Carlos mentioned, Power BI, Power Automate, Power Apps, as well as Power Virtual Agent. Those are the 4 aspects of the Power Platform. Like I mentioned, I can share with you like the certification course I'm going through right now. It really goes into a lot of the questions that I heard today, like how do we use the common data service, the common data model, all of these things that are underlying that you don't absolutely need to know in order to create an app, but I think getting that basic fundamental understanding of how connectors work, the difference between Canvas apps, model-driven apps, there's portal apps as well. So there's so much information on this topic, and at Microsoft we're investing heavily in this area. So you can expect to see more and more updates every couple of weeks, months. It's a huge area of growth for us, and we're just seeing more and more people. This is citizen-driven app development, right? It's the idea that IT doesn't have to be the only people who are creating apps, creating services. If you're, if you're, a regular business worker, information worker, and you see a problem, you see a paper-driven process today, you now are empowered to create an app on your own, right? And so that's a big deal, and more people are taking advantage of it.
Yeah. All right. Okay. It seems
Prove
like
it, Jim here from
Yeah.
TechSoup. Hey,
Sure.
I know that everyone has their own personal favorite tips for using Power Apps. Do you have something that you carry in your pocket that you like to tell people as they come into the work?
As you come into the work, I mean, I feel like most people, including myself, I look at it and be like, wow, this seems really cool, right? Like the idea of like creating an app, but like I don't know. I don't have an idea right now as to like what kind of app. Like I just want to get started and go into it. So, I mean, I really, to come back, like I think the App in a Day training is great. It'll spark some ideas on things that you might not have thought that you needed to make more efficient. Even just things like simple spreadsheets, right? Like if you want to make the spreadsheet available to everyone in a mobile friendly way, the App in a Day course is fantastic. The Power Apps 101 course is fantastic. So not so much of a tip, but as opposed to if you're really just trying to figure out like, this seems intimidating, like it seems cool, but also intimidating. I think our Power Apps 101 course is a fantastic place to start. App in a Day, fantastic place to start as well. And I mean, you can just dive into it too. Like Carlos mentioned, the 30-day free trial, go to make.powerapps.com and just play around with it. I mean, I think the advice that I gave before of just creating one template that you're comfortable with, maybe have a few text input fields that you throw in there, maybe a form submission, and then have a second screen where you get a success screen, like your order is being processed, even if it's not connected to a backend, right? Just creating two simple screens like that, and then going through the process of publishing your mobile app, and then you can, pull out your phone, access the app on your phone. I think for me, just that small level of accomplishment goes a long way, just to say, oh, I can create a simple 2-screen app with 2 text fields, a submit button, and then I get a success screen or an error screen. I think it's just a good way to get started. I mean, this is all about building, making, empowering people who may have otherwise felt intimidated by creating apps. And yeah, I don't know, just dive in, take that 30-day trial, take the basic training courses and dive in. I mean, if you're like me, August has been a little bit slower. I think things are definitely going to pick up next week after Labor Day, but for me, I've had some time to look into training, look into the certification course, the Power Apps 101 course. And if you have time this week or right after this call, just dive in. And Carlos shared his email address. I'm happy to share mine as well if you have additional questions. Yeah.
all right. I love that. Dive in. That's the spirit.
Yeah, dive in.
Yeah. All right. So Purva, we have another question. And that is, I need to lock a date, a field on a screen so it is viewable only. Is there a feature to do that in Power Apps? I haven't found how to do that yet.
So I'm sorry, to lock a date field, is that right?
To lock a date field on the screen.
Dot field.
Yeah. Does that ring any bell?
Not quite. I mean,
All right.
so are we looking, so in terms of the data type, I mean, there certainly is a way, like in your, if that's what we're talking about, right? In terms of a form submission, like where you ask users to input fields, there is definitely a way to go in and force that field to only accept dates, so you can process that data more efficiently, like wherever you're going to process it. So there definitely is a way in terms of field submission to force that field submission to be in a specific format, right? Like whether that's MMDD YYYY or MMDD YY, or just you can force it to be a date field, and you can force it to come in a specific format. I hope that I think that's the question. If so, yeah, absolutely, you can do that.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Okay, so let's see if we have any further question. Okay, so it seems like before we wrap up, okay, I think we got one question here. I think that's the explanation of the previous question that we asked.
Okay, great.
That how do I log any field so it's viewable only? That's the same question. I mean, it's asked by Deanna.
So it's viewable only, as opposed to as opposed to having someone be able to edit it, I think.
Yeah, I think that's what she's trying to ask.
Yeah, well, so I mean, inside of excuse me, inside of Power Apps, if you enter in a text field, then that's something that users will be able to go in and edit. But you don't have to create it as a text field, right? Like you can just create it as I forget what the term is, and maybe I can look at Power Apps right now. But you can create it as a label, where the label displays whatever date field that you have in the background. So, I mean, there's a few different ways that you can display data to a user. Like you can have labels, which is just text, right? And that text can, be a date that you pull in from another data source. It can just be hard-coded text that you enter in. So that's what's referred to as a label. But if you have a text box, then that's something that users are going to be able to enter data into, right? And you can have that text box pre-populated with the date or something that users can go in and edit. So I guess in that recommendation, you wouldn't use a text box, you would use a label, and labels are not editable. So hopefully that helps.
Right. All right, thanks. Okay, so let's see if we have any other question. Let's see. And before we actually wrap up this conversation, like we have different levels here, different participants here, and then they have all different tech levels. So what would be one advice that you would like to give to all the learners?
To all the learners, I mean, I feel like it really is just dive in again, right? Like get that 30-day trial, jump into it, and just make your first app, right? And if you really want to hold on to that 30-day trial, then go into our 101. So if you're starting at the very beginning, right, like go to our 101 course. That's probably the first thing I would say. And then app in a day. Again, those are, I feel like those are designed for the intro users, right? The 201 course is designed for people who are just ready to start doing things, ready to start making. At that point, I'd say get your 30-day trial. And Carlos mentioned there's the app in a day, but there's a lot of other ones. There's app in a day for beginner. There's app in an hour, even, if you want to like really go faster. So, I mean, that's what I would say in terms of intermediate, but I also think that, you can learn Power Apps in a vacuum, right? But I think that it makes sense to also just look at a basic level of what Power Automate does. Look at how Power BI is used, right? So Power BI is the analytics arm. Power Apps is the building app creation mode. Power Automate is the sort of thing where you can set triggers and just automate processes in the back end that you don't even need to think about. So I think those three things really work in tandem, and they're all built on top of the common data service, the common data model, all of these connectors. So yeah, I mean, I guess like I've said it a few times now, but my main advice is just to dive in, take the intro courses. We have, Carlos, feel free to reach out to Carlos. You can reach out to myself as well. We are at Microsoft, we're looking at updating our like training and resources page with a lot more Power Apps content. We built a lot with TechSoup. We have other content with other partners as well. So people are free to look at that. But again, this is intended for, you don't need to have any special IT knowledge to get started, right? Like you can just be a regular information worker, a regular first line worker. You don't need to have any advanced coding background. Like if you've used Excel, then you can learn how to use Power Apps. It's that simple. So hopefully you don't feel intimidated. Hopefully you can just dive in.
Yeah.
Because it's great, it's powerful, and we're going to continue to innovate when it comes to this space. So, yeah.
All right. I think we got one last question here.
Sure.
And I think that's something related to the integration piece that you just
Sure.
that you just talked about. Is there any PowerShell integration that can be used to help manage Power Apps?
Yeah. And so I don't know too much more detail on this one, and I'm happy to follow up if I can get this person's email address. But no, totally. Like you can use PowerShell, you can use command line, like whatever you're comfortable doing. I mean, that's obviously more complex and a little bit more advanced. But if someone knows how to use PowerShell commands, you can really dive in behind the scenes, go under the GUI interface that Power Apps provides. Because Power Apps is designed for people who don't know PowerShell, but if you do know PowerShell, you can certainly make edits to the apps as needed. But I need to give you a little bit more information on how to do that, and I'm happy to do that.
All right. Thanks. So yeah, folks, I probably said that one last question, which is not the case. We still have 10 minutes here, and then you guys are most welcome to ask questions. We have Purva with us, so yeah, you're happy to answer those questions. All right, let's wait for a bit and see if we get another question. If not,
Okay,
then
sounds good.
Probably, yeah.
Sounds good. Cameron, have you used Power Apps before? I can put you on the spot.
Well, I'm honestly getting acquainted.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so I'm like not too much into that, but yeah, I think that's like today's presentation is really eye-opening for me, and I was like, okay, I think this is something I can, as you said, like dive in and then start working. So I think I will try to take advantage of those 30 days trial.
It's pretty cool. Like you can just you have so many apps. If you're like me, you have a lot of apps on your phone, and you can, within like 2 hours, you can create another app that shows up on your phone that you created, right? And
Absolutely.
For me, that's pretty cool. It's like, yeah, I built this with some help from Microsoft, but I built this. I got this on my phone. I can use it. I can share it with people. I think that's really cool.
Right. Okay, thank you, Purva, for joining us. It's been superb and really helpful for us, and also for our participants to really understand. And then you answer all the questions, so we really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then earlier, I want to thank to Carlos for
of course
the first part of this live event to answer those questions and enlighten us with the Power App information.
Of course.
So this session is recorded, as you guys know, and the recording will be available, so you can also watch it later if you want. If you wanted to rerun some information, you can always do that. thank you for joining us on this live event. And if you have any other question or something like that, you can also just forward that information to the links that we shared. And yeah, and wish you all the best in your all endeavors.